alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello, and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, an author of fantasy and science fiction. I'm out walking again today because I'm also celebrating, and that's why this episode is a little late. Not because of the celebrations, but because of what led to them. A lot of work. Well, you can hear the neighborhood dog about. But anyway, one of the dogs anyway. But, yeah, so my latest novel is up for pre-order, and it's coming out. It'll actually be out in just a few days, and I just finished the edits on it yesterday, which was the last day I could do it, so that's what kind of absorbed me the rest of the week, and I forgot to even get an episode out to you on Wednesday. My apologies. But the workload was extreme for me anyway. I mean, the first day of the week I did like 7 hours. The second day I did 8. And then on Wednesday, I work from Monday to Friday, of course. That's why I start on Monday. And then on Wednesday I worked for 12 hours or so. And that just about knocked it out. Which is kind of crazy. I was cutting it a little close because the pre-order was due that evening. But I did it. And I'm pleased with the result. I'm actually extremely pleased with the result. It's one of my favorite books that I've ever written. And I'm surprised how much I love it. At least I was when I was reading it. This is Well Country, is the name of the book. But I shouldn't have been surprised because I wrote the book the way it wanted to be written, basically. I mean, that's what I kind of listened to my heart as they say, when I chose the method to approach it each day, and that I think is how it's going to be in the future as well. I'm going to listen to my heart more, and my mind and my ideas about where the book is supposed to go. I'll just do it. I'll do what I want, and that might sound weird because if you're not new to writing, if you're new to writing or you don't know much about it. Or, alternatively, if you're about writing to market, these are things that seem weird to people, right? Like, you either think, there's always other possibilities, but it's likely that the uneducated in writing think, or the unskilled, the untrained, right? They'll think, of course you write what you want. That's what a novel is, isn't it? Anything you want happens. And that's not quite true. But it kind of is as well. It's kind of true, it's kind of not. There's a little bit of each. Because, sure, when you start a book, it can be basically anything. But by the time you're done with it, story logic dictates what should happen at the end. At least to a degree. And I use the term story logic to mean just about anything that I can attribute to, just like, it has to be this way to make the story work, right? That's story logic. Once you figure that out, the book really just falls into place. But if you start out like I do, and you don't know where you're going necessarily, or completely where you're going, you have an idea of the ending, you know what you want to put in the book, but you don't have an outline, or even really a firm plan, then your story logic gets discovered on the way, just like everything else. And that is really cool. I love it. I love doing that. And yet, I always resist it when I think about the book. That's what it is. The War of Art. Steven Pressfield wrote this book, The War of Art. He talks about this thing called resistance, which always is trying to stop creatives from doing their thing. And I think that's a pretty good analogy for what I'm talking about here, or rather, this is a manifestation of what he calls resistance. Because when I sit down and try to think about the book, that's the opposite of writing the book. It's actually intellectualizing something that doesn't need it, doesn't require explanation to myself, because it's an operation. It's going to occur when I'm not thinking about it. And that is extremely weird to say. It's the inner game of tennis, as I always talk about. It's the flow state, the zone. These things you can't just do on command while thinking about them, at least. You can set yourself up to do them. Aim yourself at them. But if you're thinking, I need to write this book, these things need to go in it, at least if you're like me, that's not going to work. The book you're going to write will be stilted. Like the book I'd write in that circumstance, let me put it that way, ends up stilted, ends up weak. I've written a lot of books like that too, because I've fallen into this many times. None of my books that are out now, I don't think, have that. But just including something in a book because it's a part of the story by outline is one of the big flaws against story logic, you know? Like if your genre demands something to happen in your story, but your story demands that not happen, which do you listen to? That's for the writing and market crowd out there. And if you want my answer, it's always the story. You got to do what the story calls for, or what's the point? You might as well just not have written the book if you don't do the thing that you set up at the end. When you set it up at the beginning, you know, after you set it up at the beginning, you have to accomplish the goal at the end, or you have to fulfill the promise at the end. Or what are you doing? Nothing but betraying your reader. And that is, well, not a sin. I don't think of it as as evil or wicked. It's weak. It's a poor decision. And sometimes any decision is the wrong decision. But there's always another option, which is to just let the story flow from you. Once you have, this is an option that becomes unlocked, so to speak, once you have enough skill, once you spend enough time at it. I wouldn't claim to be a talented writer. In fact, I think I was actually pretty bad at it when I started, maybe even exceptionally bad. Thanks to some of my poorer qualities, my autism, my anger. When I was a teenager, your hormones are a hell of a drug. And, yeah, that's the kind of thing that when you get past all that, though, the time will teach you, not your thinking mind what to do, but it will teach my brother and I kind of think of as the body mind, I think. It will teach that what to do. And then that body mind, that thing that acts for you, will do what it needs to do. And you may not understand it or know it, but it will do those things that you need from it. And it will execute those tasks. And that is a huge part of what writing a book is for me now. Maybe even most of it. You know, that's what I was refusing to let happen for a long time in this book, which is why it took so long to write. It feels like a long time, 3 months. 3 months into the year. This is my first finished book. I know lots of authors out there, Paul Sading, Blaze Ward, people who have been guests on this show and many others who have many more books finished already this year than I do. And it's sad for me because a lot of these people think of me as a pretty fast writer. Paul does, that's for sure. But that's not really been true because I haven't spent enough time at it, but I'm going to now. I just told you I spent 25 hours editing this, maybe like 30 hours editing this week, but between Monday and Wednesday. And that alone, that experience has reawakened in me again this idea that I can spend more time on it. When I was 19, I wrote Orphan Mage. The first 10,000 words, 12,000 words came out in one day. I spent 10 hours writing that day when I was 19. And back then, it was easy. It just kind of happened. That was the experience of flowing, of letting the body mind do its thing. And often, and as you may guess from the age thing, it's been some time, the body mind has gotten better at telling stories for me. And meanwhile, The other mind, the mind that tells the body mind, directs it, the director, doesn't really do any storytelling. He tries, it can't. Doesn't have the equipment. What am I talking about? All this two minds nonsense is going to get in your way as well if you worry about it. So it really does boil down to one other thing. I mean, writing quickly, editing thoroughly, being determined, or at least being effective, all boil down to one thing. Stop worrying so much. That's a message from me to me and from me to you. Because when you worry about your book, or really anything you're trying to do, you get in your own way. You get in your own creative path and you block it. Maybe there is such a thing as writer's block, but it's your own butt. It's just like those memes about the tanker in the Suez Canal. You get locked up because, and when I say you, I mean me, I get locked up or have gotten locked up because I got in my own way. And I think it'll be the same for a lot of people. I mean, some people are still going to want to outline, and that's fine. I'm not against it. I mean, I'm for whatever works for each individual. But once you have that outline, or when you're writing that outline, all that stuff, a large part of it you're going to have to do by getting out of your own way. And that will be, you can hope, enough. And I think that's actually worth it. That's the right method for many people. If not everyone. I don't know. I don't speak for everyone. But I speak as someone who has a lot of experience writing books now. I mean, this is my 24th full novel. And I've written a bunch of novellas and short stories now too. Not as many as I did novels. I think I have fewer of each of those than I have novels. But, 50 some stories that I count. And there's a lot that I don't because I didn't finish them, or they're too small, or they're too weird, or I forgot about them. We're talking like 100 stories, say. Maybe. At least 50, probably more like 60 or 70. Completed. And yeah, I've only got a few out there, but I've got some experience. So I'm just trying to say, I'm not trying to make an authority claim here. Just saying that if you're new with this, you might want to listen to just your inner voice and stop worrying so much. Because I know a lot of people worry about writing. I've got friends who worry about things like the creative output of painting or drawing or any of that stuff. And that's maybe a little different, because if you're worried about approaching a canvas or a miniature for a war game or whatever, that can be, a challenge to do. I mean, it can be also, there's a risk to it, at least it feels like there is, because you could destroy that, you could waste the canvas, you could destroy the model. You could do a really bad paint job on a model, for example. I still have trouble with that one, honestly. I struggle with that one. But that's all foolish, if you ask me. And if you ask your body mind to do it, it'll do better than you thought you could alone. I almost guarantee that. I can guarantee that you'll do better than you think it will do, but not than you'd do if you thought about it. Or, you know what I mean? Okay, let me say that again. I can guarantee the results that your body mind gets you will be at least as good as what you get by worrying about it. And it'll be more fun and it'll be easier. Yeah, I think I can guarantee that for anyone with my mentality, which admittedly is not that many people, most likely. But, I think it will apply to a lot of others too. You don't have to be me for this to be true. And people wrote, like I mentioned those other books before, The Inner Game of Tennis, the War of Art, these books, they existed long before I did, or at least I think the Inner Game of Tennis might be newer, but either way, I didn't think about that. I read those books. I didn't write them. And you know what I mean? Like, so I got this idea that this past year that if I didn't worry so much, but then I worried about not worrying. This is don't do that either. Stop worrying. Just stop. Don't change what you're worried about. Stop worrying if you can. It's just a better life. So happy April. It's a new month. I got Whale Country will be out just a few days after this episode with a new episode of the show too, to boot on it, featuring a returning guest. I'll leave that silent for now though. Quiet. Don't say the name of the guest, but it's all in the bag. And I will be back with you again soon with more interviews and more chatter. Hopefully this wasn't too deranged or demented. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. It's hard to think all the time when I'm walking. It's actually easier to think, but harder to talk. So, thanks a lot. And have a good week and stay safe. If you haven't pre-ordered Wild Country yet, please feel free. That is at Amazon.com. And it's the third book of the Demon Hunter series, which is getting really nice, actually. I'm very pleased with it. And people seem to like it now, especially since I revised book 1 and did the full edits just in December. So thanks for listening, and stay safe.
That tears it.